Well, hello. Hi, Haley. How are you?
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so tonight we are recapping Second Chronicles from my book, right?
That's the one.
That's the one.
That is the one.
Yeah. Yeah, I had it was really, really funny. I will not tell who said this because she would be so embarrassed, but um, she she was she's reading it because she said, Anita, I have never actually read the Bible through in a year, and I'm using your devotional to help me do that. And so she said, I'll be honest with you, the Chronicles are killing me. I about fell over. I literally fell over.
Yeah, the first like third of First Chronicles was a struggle. And then Second Chronicles hasn't been as bad, but yeah, it's just genealogy after genealogy, and somebody didn't follow God, and then God punished them, and then somebody else followed God. But like it is literally just so repetitive. And then it keeps saying that we're going to learn more about them in Kings. And I'm like, well, fancy that. Like we're gonna
Hey.
all over again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's so cool because we have finished our very first month and we only have 11 more months left to go.
That's all.
I know. So anyway, I wanted to um, ask you kind of what your thoughts were, like what your favorite, and if somebody comes back and watches this and they don't know what we're talking about, I have written a book. It's called Rinse, Reflect, Repeat. It's a devotional, and this devotional is a 365-day journey in walking through the Bible alphabetically. I mean, we did not start on Genesis and we did not start on Matthew. We started on Acts. And so this whole month, we've walked through 4 books of the Bible: Acts, Amos, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. And so if you do not have the devotional, then it's a great way to go ahead and start. And even if you start on March the 15th or whatever, you still can, start then and jump on in and read the Bible through in a year. And then I have a companion journal also, because part of the rinse, reflect, repeat journey is you reflect on what you are reading and what have you. And so what Haley is here because she is the one that is the backbone of this whole entire journey.
Oh my, that's
Okay,
okay.
well, we're both the backbone, I guess. But one of the things that you are doing is you,
Sorry,
and
child.
that's her baby. Um, Hi there. Hi. Hi, Olive, my grandbaby. But yeah, so Haley is the one editing the podcast. And so you can come to the Rinse, Reflect, Repeat devotional group and follow along sometimes on that. You can follow along on the podcast, which I basically will recap the devotional, but I add a few little nuggets along the way or some modern thoughts. And I'm also recording it. So if you'd rather watch it on YouTube, then YouTube is also holding all of my podcast videos as well. So tonight we were just gonna quickly go over the recapping of Second Chronicles, the the book that killed my friend.
That's so funny.
Yeah, yeah. And so anyway, Second Chronicles is really just continuing on of the First Chronicles, or chronicling the kings and things like that that were happening in that moment. And so I wrote several devotions regarding the Second Chronicles. And so, Haley, what struck out at you?
Yeah, so I had a few this month that I really enjoyed. The first one definitely was living above your reputation, which was the 22nd of
Mhm.
this month. And it's funny because in the episode you mentioned how growing up you always told us you would say that saying that was like what was it again? Would you remind me, please?
Which the thing
It was
oh,
yes, like
live
oh
a
like
life, live
yeah,
a life,
live away yeah.
live a
Sorry, we're
life,
both trying to say
live a life in such a way so that if anybody talks about you, no one believes it.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was interesting hearing growing up hearing you say that and then it being applied in the devotion. And it really is true, you know, just living above your reputation so that
Hmm.
you know, like Solomon did. And I really loved that story and hearing some of those things that people may not talk about regarding his life and his reign. So that was definitely a really good one.
Yeah, and just to recap that, King Solomon had built built the temple, and he had built his kingdom basically, and he had this reputation, and Queen of Sheba had heard about the reputation, and she's like, I've got to see this for myself. So she literally, had this whole big, parade almost, I guess. I don't know. That's in my mind. That's what I vision it. And she went and saw it and was absolutely amazed at all the things that King Solomon had established and built. And she questioned him with really hard questions, and he answered her. And she finally was like totally floored. And I think one translation uses the word breathless. And uh, just then she finally says, your reputation was what brought me here, but your reputation, even though it was great, it's so below the real you kind of a thing, so he was actually
Yeah.
looking above his reputation. And I think that that's important for us to remember and to do, is to we can live above our reputation. And
Yeah.
that is saying if our reputation is good, right?
Yeah. I would hope so.
Right. Yeah. That one of the things that I loved, I know we're not going to be going into like perfect order, but I loved today's devotional. Um, Today's devotional was about I talked about our foster kids, and I talked about the fact that, what did I title it? I titled it uh,
Positioning reformers.
yeah, positioning reformers. And basically I talked about how that we as humans, as Christ followers, can really uh, be used to position people or children or youth or the next generation to be their own reformers or reformers, however you say that. And I talked about our foster kids and how that, we had them for close to 3 years, and I have no idea where they're at right now, but I think about them often and wonder, will I ever see them again? And I hope that I will see them in heaven. They did actually accept Christ under our watch, and I'm hoping that that's with them. That we all can be used to position other people to be a reformer in our society. So that was probably one of my favorite ones of this, you know.
Yeah. That was a good one too. Well, and when I was editing that one, I was thinking of um because obviously we don't have foster kids, but we do have our own kids that we can position to, you know, live in a godly way and to follow Christ. And I think they learn that by example, and which is why it's been so key for us to do this devotion, have our time because they're watching us too. And so we do want to position our kids for that, like you positioned the foster kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I don't know, it it's amazing how that just our own lives can be so impactful on others. Yeah. Another one of my favorite ones was the individual impact of God's suddenly, and how impactful it is to realize that we as individuals can impact our churches and our communities, and it can happen suddenly if we obey. I know there's a lot of reference to obedience, but really that's how we live this life. That's how we,
Yeah.
you know, um that's how we make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good one too. I also liked God covers our losses because none of us are perfect. And a lot of times he does pick up the slack where we mess up or where we, make the wrong choice or go in the wrong direction. A lot like a parent would to their child, like if
Mhm.
a kid, forgets their backpack at school, what does a parent do? They throw it in the car and take it to them, and so it's interesting to see that dynamic from a spiritual perspective. And I think sometimes we forget how much God actually does pick up the slack, and um, yeah, we kind of take it for granted. So I liked that one as well.
Yeah. Um one of the people who Lynn, she comes on here once in a while with us. She actually couldn't make it. One of the two of the people that normally come couldn't make it, but Lynn sent me a thought on one of the one of the devotionals. She actually liked the one that I wrote for January 23rd called "Setting Our Hearts." Um, and I'm just going to read to you what she wrote because it was kind of cool. She said, I loved the analogy with the jeweler setting the jewels and setting our hearts towards seeking the Lord. We are secure in God's hands that are like the prongs the jeweler wraps the jewel in. Malachi 3:17 came to mind, and how precious we are to God as his masterpieces of grace. We are his workmanship created unto good works. So anyway, I loved just how that she grabbed it, she got it, how that, you know, when that jeweler is so careful to set that precious stone in the ring and just set it there perfectly, and it fits in there perfectly and looks beautiful, and every one of them are different. That's we if we set our heart towards God, and are in that holder basically, then it's kind of like a foundation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that
um
was a good one.
and you said that you liked also the honoring an unbelieving parent, and how in Chronicles there are so many kings that did not have a godly influence over their lives. And so I talked about that in the devotional. I talked about how that you know honoring an ungodly parent, which is what happens quite frequently. There's a parent in the Chronicles or whatever that's not faith or believing. But the example that I gave, of King Asa removing his mother, from all of that, he removed his mother from being that in that position of queen because she did not comply with the laws of God, and how hard that must have been for him, to have a mother who wasn't a believer and didn't have the same faith. And so anyway, I wanted to just get your thoughts because I know you said that you liked that
Yeah,
one.
I did. Well, it resonated with me because I have an unbelieving parent, and I grew up, praying for them and, hoping um, for them to get saved and all the things. And so that one resonated because I understand how that feels, and I understand that position in life. And um, I did think of it though as in kind of a different perspective because like for me, I didn't really ever have a problem honoring my unbelieving parent. Um, because honor comes from a place of love, not a
Mhm.
place of because they believe the same way I do, then I'm going to honor them, or because they agree with everything I agree with, then I'm going to honor them. I honor because I love and I respect. And um, so I kind of was thinking of it in that way, and that's just encouragement for anyone who has a friend that's unbelieving, or a child maybe that's unbelieving, or even somebody who may have a different political belief than you do. We don't honor or respect someone because they think like we do or they believe like we do. We honor them because we love them and we cherish them the way that God loves and cherishes us, and the way that Jesus loved everybody in the New Testament, not just the people who followed and believed in him. He loved and honored everybody. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I did like that one a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And if you are watching or you haven't watched this yet and you're wondering what are they talking about? We're just recapping from my book. This is called Rinse, Reflect, Repeat. It's a 365-day devotional, reading the Bible through alphabetically, and we are just in Second Chronicles right now, and going through. And Jonathan just posted and said hello to you, Haley, and said great conversation.
Hello.
Yeah, it's been so cool to just walk through this and see it. Now, I will also tell you, I really liked the one about tithing, and
Mhm.
is tithing optional? You know, the way that I always say it is any kind of level of obedience is optional. I mean, any
Yeah.
kind of obedience is optional. But if you really want to live a full life, of living fully for God, then tithing isn't optional. And it really isn't. And so hopefully that day challenged people as well. But I also love the individual impact of God suddenly, and I tie those two kind of together because if we give of ourselves, in our if we give of ourselves in our giftings and calls and what we're doing for our local church and the vision that our pastor has, then we can individually impact um the suddenly that God wants to give to our pastor and to our local church, and tithing can be a part of that. So I kind of linked those two together.
Yeah, definitely. I liked all the references that you used. Just getting involved in the church and having that community, which, it kind of challenged us. Like we watch church online every Sunday. And so that's kind of our tradition. That's kind of what we do. But it challenged us to have a conversation on us going back to church, and just getting more involved in life groups, and just building more of a sorry, you might hear my kids. They're running through the house. But just building more of that church-like community. And so we definitely had those conversations as well.
Yeah. Well, and I have a friend of mine. She has been going to online church for years, and she made actually a commitment this year that she would find a church that worked with her schedule, that she would be able to go and be physical to that church. And she's been going, and it's making a difference, because you start to form friendships and community, and you can serve and do the things that the church needs. I mean, the church needs us,
Yeah.
and so that's cool. And it also gives kids, your kids some friends, so
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So impacting God suddenly could come through you. It will come through you. It can come through, any of us, as long as we set ourselves up to be receptive to that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, those are good. I'm glad that you guys all enjoyed Second
Mama.
Chronicles, because I mean,
Mama.
you know,
Mama.
to be honest, Second Chronicles, First Chronicles, Amos. I mean, out of the 4 books of the Bible that we read in January, um, probably Acts is the only one that people somewhat listen, read. But then even still, it's oftentimes not one that people read. So, anyway, we read 4 books of the Bible that might not necessarily be the most popular, but it was so cool to go through Acts, Amos, and First and Second Chronicles. And so tomorrow we start with Colossians.
Yay.
Colossians, yeah, and it's only 2 days, so that means that we will go live again in 2 nights just to talk about Colossians. So, we'll be back in the New Testament for a bit. But anyway, did you have any other thoughts?
I don't know. This was I really enjoy reading some of these books that you don't read, and kind of picking apart those nuggets, and
Mm,
so yeah, I'm excited to continue.
yeah, yeah. And the other day too that was kind of a neat one was the earthly positioning. How that in the Chronicles, um, you know, Ahaziah was, uh, you know, part of that whole process of killing and being, journeying through that whole entire process of saving Joash, right? Or yeah, Joash. And so whatever position that we have in in our lives, like whatever earthly position we have, we've got to remember that God's going to use that for his kingdom. And sometimes we forget how powerful even our earthly positions are in God's
Yeah,
eyes. And so I loved that devotion as well. So anyway,
yeah,
I enjoy it. I love the Old Testament. I'm weird and quirky that way, I guess. I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say I'm weird and quirky, but those Old Testament books that people don't always read. So anyway,
yeah,
yeah. But if you are watching, check go ahead and join our Facebook group. It's Rinse, Reflect, Repeat Devotional. And feel free to write in there golden nuggets that you have and that you've gleaned from it. And it's been enjoyable to hear some of those. I get emails too, people saying, I loved this day, messages on Facebook, I loved this day. And I would just encourage you, write it in the Facebook group too, so other people can see your notes as well. But you never know who you're going to encourage. So,
yeah. I will also say too, going into February, you do have quite a few guests in February, so
oh,
definitely
right.
be on the lookout for
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me that
Of course.
our first guest is in the second book that we'll read. It's on February 5th. So February 5th, my son Ezekiel, Haley's brother, first guest. He's going to be on there on the podcast. And so you can listen to him on the podcast. And so he's going to bring his own insights into that day's devotion. And you can also watch it on YouTube. Now, you won't be able to see his face because he did not want to go on camera. So Haley had to kind of edit him out. But, and
We
then,
made it work.
yeah, we made it work. And then February 6th, I'm having my mom come on. And then we're going to move into Deuteronomy and talk about all of the laws and all of the rules. And, if you guys are at all familiar with my upbringing, you know that my dad was very strict, and he will admit that. And there was a day that I actually talked about it because it's part of my testimony and it's part of my story. It's part of his story. But he, he, oh, thank you. Can't wait to listen and watch your son. Yes, he's got some good insights and is really, developed spiritually. Wouldn't you say, Haley?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So I'm having my dad come on there. Yes. Yes, my dad was very strict. And so it was interesting because he's going to be a guest speaker or guest on my podcast, basically on February 21st. So I'll have three different guests in February. And those are the three guests in February. And it's interesting because I bring him on because part of my story is he required us to wear dresses all the time. And he believed that it was scriptural. And there were other things that he was really strict about. And he admits, that he was too strict. And so it's interesting to hear him and watch and see what he has to say. And oftentimes we don't have relationships that are strong enough to talk about things like that. And I just felt led to tell that story in my devotional. And I felt led to have him on as a guest to talk about it. And so we are. And so anyway, it'll be a fun podcast to listen, or if you are watching it on my YouTube, to see him. And so anyway, those are a couple of things coming up in February. So I'll look forward to that as well. So tomorrow we start on Colossians. We do that 2 days. It just takes 2 days, and the chapters are short. And then we'll move to Deuteronomy.
Or First and Second Corinthians.
First and Second Corinthians. Yeah, right. Forgot. Yeah. Colossians, then First and Second Corinthians, and then Deuteronomy. Yes. Yeah. Well, do you have any other thoughts or anything to add, Haley?
No, I don't think so. We're just gonna keep trucking along.
Yeah.
Read the Bible.
Yeah, read the Bible through alphabetically in a year.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, guys. We will let you go. Thanks a lot for joining us, and grab your devotional. And remember, as always, until tomorrow, keep rinsing, reflecting, and repeating. Haley, you're supposed to say it with me.
Sorry. I thought that was your thing.
Let's try it again.
Okay, try again. Redo.
Okay. Until tomorrow, keep rinsing,
reflecting, and repeating. God bless you.
Yeah, if you listen to my podcast, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So anyway, enjoy the rest of your night, and God bless you guys.
Bye.